I was asked a few months back if I could do a sharpening on my Socom Tanto. I told the person, yeah, I would do it at some point, but the problem is I just don't use that knife. I'm not a Tanto kind of guy. However, I do use my custom, and I've actually got a chip in it, and it's gotten fairly dull using it at work. So we are going to sharpen my Marfione Socom custom. It's right under where my thumb is. Not real sure how well that's going to pick up. Regardless, there's a chip. Cut the edge off. And this has got a pretty small bevel. Let me see how high the angle is, because I'm probably going to reprofile this a little bit. Well, that's not too bad. It's probably about 24, 25 degrees. Somewhere in that ballpark. I'm using the Imanishi 400 grit latte. Now this choil is pretty jacked up. It needs to be extended, but I'm not going to. Since I'm not going to, there's going to be a bit of a flare. And it actually looks like it's ground at a different angle than the rest of the knife, which is interesting. It looks like it's at a lower angle. I don't know how the hell they did that. So that chip is right here. I want to concentrate on that spot for a minute. Start grinding some of that out. Looks pretty good. Sorry about that, guys. My phone keeps ringing. So my tip looks like it's at a different angle from the rest of the knife. I just need to get a burr there. I'm assuming they altered the angle because it thickens up so much. Alrighty, got a burr everywhere across the whole edge. And now I'm going to flip over and do the same thing. Now I got a burr. Feels like across the whole edge. I'm gonna go just a little bit longer. Doesn't quite feel even. I know other times I've used this stone, I've described it as scratchy, but with this M390, it does not feel scratchy. It feels like this knife is just gliding right across it. I'm guessing it's the wear resistance. Alright, I've got a pretty big burr, so I'm going to go ahead and try to knock some of it off. But I'm not overly concerned with it. This is the Nubatama 2K. Now I can actually feel, I can feel this stone biting into the steel where I wasn't really feeling that on the 400 grit. This might have been a job better suited for my silicon carbide stones, but I haven't used my Nubatama in a minute, so I wanted to bring it out and get some use on it. Man, the scratch pattern looks really weird right at that tip. Doesn't look consistent. It's weird. I guess it's due to the size of the bevel, making that tip look weird. I'm starting to see spiderweb cracks in this stone. I don't know if you can see them. They're starting to appear up in this area. There's a pretty long one right there. I just lapped this stone too. Using a Tenjou Nagura, however you pronounce it. Nagara? I'm horrible with Japanese pronunciations. Just like that Imanishi stone. I keep calling it Imanishi. I'm creating a slurry on this stone for basically to keep buildup off of it. As you use this stone, it builds up pretty quickly. And if you create a slurry, it seems to hold that at bay. I keep messing up the angle on this, dropping it lower than where it actually is. I'm used to sharpening at a more acute angle. This thing being set as high as it is, kind of throwing me off a little bit. But the good thing is I'm not grinding into the edge, I'm grinding into the shoulder. So I don't have to worry about dulling it, at least. I'll show you guys a neat little stropping trick. I'm sure many of you already know how to do this, but say you wanted to refine your edge a little bit more, but you don't want to take it to the stones. What you can do is generate a little more slurry. And then just take a piece of paper. And mop up that slurry on that stone. Just like that. And let it dry. Well, I'm tired of waiting on this thing to dry, so we're going to go with it as is. It may be a little damp, which can cause the paper to tear, but not a big deal. Once you've got the material on your paper, you can just wrap it around the stone like so. And there's your strop. Now obviously if you let this dry completely and you take good care of it, you can use this quite a few times. So right now, we've got all the particulates from that 4K stone. That is, all the large pieces of slurry came off, all the small pieces. So if you want to refine it even more, take a paper towel, and rub off most of that top layer. That'll remove most of those large pieces of slurry. Now you're just left with some of the smaller pieces, and of course some of the real large pieces have embedded itself into the paper itself, but for the most part you can make the strop even finer. I don't know if you can tell by the lighting, but there is metal being removed. using the Slurry as my stropping compound, the bevel, or not the bevel, but the edge has a little more toothy aggression than it would if I just used white compound on a leather strop. So it can have two benefits for you. One, it can obviously strop your knife, and two, it can continue to give you that toothy feel if that's what you're aiming for, especially if you're going with a higher grit stone. Now, usually when I use a 4K stone and white compound, I get a fairly polished edge. I mean, it's not super polished, but it's not as toothy and aggressive as this one feels. Give you guys a peek of this bevel. So like I said, the back end is going to have a little bit of a flare. Right there's where that chip was. Looks like I got most of that, if not all of it, out. I don't feel anything, so hopefully that will not come back to plague me. Alrighty guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them below. Y'all have a good one.